there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our Friday live question and answer class. Today we're going to be talking about a very useful topic, which is common words that you say every day that you may have either an accent error pattern on, or you may be pronouncing differently than Americans do. I like to talk about these words because we use them all the time. They make up the bulk of what we say, and so if you can change your patterns on these words, it has a big effect on your overall speech. That's one of the basic principles of my Smart American Accent training, really focusing in on the things you actually say so that when you're practicing and changing your speech, it's effective and efficient for having an American accent and improving your communication. I'm also going to give you a quick tip. We do that at the end, something you can use right away to start improving your American accent. I'd like to let you know that I have some fall classes beginning next week here in the Seattle area, and I hope you can join me for those. There's still a few spots available. You can register on my website. I'll put the link there in the chat for you. And for those of you who are not here in the Seattle area, I'm also going to be debuting a new 6-week online course that should be available midweek next week. And that's going to be a great new course with a lot of new material, quizzes, practice exercises, and things to help you really kickstart your American accent. So I hope you'll check that out. It'll have a free trial, so there's no obligation. You can go in there, see if it works for you, use the videos, use the resources, and improve your American accent. So let's start talking about these common words that you say every day that you may have a mispronunciation on. Also, feel free to ask questions at any time. It is a question and answer class, so you can ask about something I'm talking about or anything else related to American accent, and I will get to you with an answer. If you're watching later and not live, please put your questions in the comments. I do come back and answer those questions later on. So we have a question right away, so we'll start with that. Pascal wants to know, do I have to put my upper front teeth and bottom ones together when I say the sound S in American English? Because in my language, I don't. So when we say the S sound, my teeth are pretty close to each other, but they don't have to be touching. The way I make the S is more about the position of my tongue in my mouth relative to my teeth. So my tongue needs to be behind the teeth in order to create a small space for that S, for that fricative sound to escape. So as long as the sound has this sound, it doesn't really matter how you're forming it with your mouth. Americans do have some variation. Some people do that with the tongue tip up, tongue tip down. Generally, the teeth are fairly close to each other, but I'm guessing that the S sound in your language is very similar to American English. Great, so good question. And on that topic of the S sound, I'm going to talk about the word says. So if I write this word, this is one of the words that I typically hear most non-native speakers might have one or more errors on this word. So if we look at the word says, there are 4 letters in the word, but there are 3 sounds. So the first sound is what we were just talking about, American S. Most people don't have an issue with that sound. The next sound has an issue. It's in American English, it's vowel eh. This is the same vowel as in words like get and read and met. And then the next sound in that word is the Z sound, a voiced Z. Pascal, I'll answer your question in just a moment. So what happens here, first of all, is that very frequently you might see the word says, and it looks just like the word say. And in the word say, the vowel sound is A. So why in this word is it eh instead of A? Well, that's one of the inconsistencies of American spelling. I highly recommend getting used to using an online dictionary to look and see what vowel is in a word, because you really can't rely on spelling to tell you. So firstly, correcting the vowel from says to says can be very helpful. And then secondly, the second error that I hear on this word is that people will de-voice that final Z sound. So their word says sounds more like ses with an S sound instead of a Z. This happens on many words that end with the letters S, and those actually make the Z sound Z rather than S. So two different error patterns on this word says. You can see a video highlighting how to change those error patterns and all the details of the word says on my channel page, Speech Modification Seattle, and get started on changing that word says. Even if you change one of the patterns, or maybe only have one of the error patterns on this word, it does really stand out if you make those errors, and it can make it difficult for your listener to know what you were trying to say. Good, so I'm going to pause there on my common words and take a look at the questions. Thanks for waiting, Pascal. He wanted to know, he says, somehow can't get the hang of American intonation. When I try to imitate it, it sounds like I'm whining. Okay, well, I would say that it's going to sound foreign to your ears at first, and the whining quality probably has more to do with your overall tone. I'm not sure I'm going to agree with you that you sound whiny, but the sense of feeling that American intonation, it's really can be quite variable. So the important elements are having those pitch contours and the length on stressed words. And I recommend working on one element at a time, thinking about lengthening your stressed words, trying that, practicing it, implementing it, and then when that feels comfortable, layering in the pitch. And you can find, as you probably know and have used, the videos in my intonation playlist will talk to you and walk you through the steps of pitch and length. And another thing that you can try is imitating what you've heard and trying not to think too much about it, trying not to think about the details that I teach you in my videos, but more going with your gut feeling. And if you do that and it sounds whiny to you, then try to do it. Try to say the same things without sounding whiny and see what happens to your intonation. So figure out what elements of intonation give you that perception of your own speech and play around with it. It's definitely flexible to some degree. Yes, there are rules and patterns for how we convey meaning, but within the length, within the pitch changes, there is definitely quite a range of what's normal and acceptable. So give that a try, and I hope that helps you. Okay, we have another question. I have difficulty pronouncing the word really. Thanks. Yes, many people do. And I do have a video for that, which I will send you the link or put it in the comments after we're finished, but I'll talk you through it briefly. So there's a couple of things to know. The word really has a couple of different pronunciations. So I personally tend to pronounce it with the vowel I. And it sounds like this. Really. So that's the same vowel as in pink pig, indifferent. And that's one way to pronounce it. You can also pronounce it with vowel E, really, really. I find that more difficult and it sounds less natural to me. Even though we say real, real, when we put it together with really, we tend to reduce that syllable rather than making it real, 2 syllables. The first syllable just becomes 1. So I tend to say really, really, with the stress on the first syllable. The L might give you trouble, the R might give you trouble, and definitely doing those 2 sounds together can be challenging. Try to remember that you want to keep your R back in your mouth, and your L touches in the front. So start, one way to build that, put that sequence of sounds back and front together, which is challenging, is just to start from the back. So try lee, lee. Typically that's not too difficult if you start with your tongue in that position. Once you've gotten comfortable with saying lee, try putting the r before it. Lee, lee, really, really. Go slowly, break apart the syllables. As that becomes more comfortable, speed up. Really, really, really. That's kind of what I advise in my really video. I probably give you a few other tips there, so you might want to check that one out. If you go to my channel page, Speech Modification Seattle, there's a search box there, so you could just type in the word really or American R or any of the topics related to that, and the videos will pop up. So you'll be able to find that video. Hope that helps you. Okay, question about the TH sound. How to pronounce the TH sound? This is a great question. And I do have a full playlist on how to pronounce TH. Again, go to my channel page, look at the playlists, find American TH. There are two types of TH sounds, but they're both made with the same position in the mouth. So the main thing that you want to think about when producing American TH is having your tongue resting gently between your teeth and making sure that the air in that word continues. So for most people, what can happen is that the air will stop. Maybe their tongue is behind their teeth. So a word like that sounds more like that. My tongue is back and pushing against my teeth instead of between. That is what I want, and that is the error pattern. Or for some languages, my tongue is behind my teeth, not pushing, but down, and it sounds more like a Z. So that would sound like that. I also actually have a free ebook that walks you through the steps of changing the word the, teaches you what the errors are, teaches you how to make the TH sound with links to all of my relevant videos. So I think I have a quick link for that, and I'm going to put that in the chat for you. So if you go to my website, speechmodification.com, you'll see right on the home page this link that takes you to my free ebook. You can download that for free, and it will walk you through the steps, show you pictures of what's happening with that TH sound and what you need to do differently, and give you links directly to the videos walking you through those steps. So great question. TH is challenging for people from many, many language backgrounds. And the other thing that ebook will help you do is go from just making the TH sound by itself through the various steps of how to get it integrated in your speech. So typically, even just making the TH or by itself can be challenging at first. Walks you through how to do that. And then you need to be able to put it into words, put those words into sentences, and get it to be where when you're talking, you have the new habit of using the American TH rather than the error pattern from your accent in the TH. So that's a big complicated answer to a fairly simple question, but there are multiple steps, and I hope that I covered the information that you wanted about American TH. Please feel free to ask more about it if I didn't touch on what you were hoping to get out of that. So thank you for the great questions. Julian, nice to see you. Okay, so more questions, feel free to put those in the chat and I'll answer. We talked about the common word says, how we tend to have errors on the vowel in that word, and also errors on the final Z sound in that word. And the reason for those vowel errors is that in your native language, you learn a sound system. And the first language that you learn helps you hear vowel sounds, consonant sounds, helps you know what they mean, how they go together. And that sound system in your brain acts like a filter on any other language that you learn. So when American English comes into your brain, it runs through that filter of your native sound system. And then when you speak, it comes out with the filter. So you're using elements from your own sound system rather than the American English sound system when you're speaking. Now you do develop American accent filters in your brain. You are able to make changes. You're not completely speaking with your native language sound system, but there's some places, particularly with vowel sounds, where you're actually hearing the American English. You're hearing it differently than Americans do. And so I highly recommend when you're looking at training and changing on vowels to use listening practice as part of the element. You can go to my vowels playlist. You can go to individual videos on words like says and other vowel videos to get a sense of, okay, for when I'm saying the word says, the vowel is ah, like in red tent. Here's other vowels that do that. Here are the error patterns I might have. It's really based on the first languages that you hear and the sound system in your brain. So another question, great question. World, work, and ward sounds the same. Okay, so the word world and the word work are similar. And the word ward has a different vowel. So all of these have the W and the R. They do have a lot of similarities. World and work both have vowel So even though they're spelled with OR, they're the same vowel as in person, sure, bird, paper. We really think of it as ER because we use that at the ends of words. But in the middle of words, ER, the sound can be represented by a lot of different letters. So that's the first thing to know. World and work both have But then here's where they differ. World, you have to make sure you have that L sound. And a lot of times we put like a little bit of a schwa sound before it. That actually helps me. If I go from to ul without anything in between, it's very challenging. So here's how this would sound. World, world. And so my tongue, as it's moving back, world, or actually moving from the back to the front, it goes into kind of a central position of that sound. World. So it might help you to actually see it like this. Old world. Now I don't want to drag it out. Old. It's, I'm going to sound very strange if I say it that slowly. But as I'm learning to sequence those sounds, go ahead and say them separately, say them slowly, and then build them together, just like we did for our earlier word. Okay, so world, and then work. That's world, and work is just the and a k. Work. I say just that. I know it's not that easy. It can be a challenging word. But that's where you want to make sure that the difference is that the end of your word is clear. You have a voiced D sound, D on world, and work, you have a voiceless K sound. Then lastly, the word ward, I'll write it again down here, ward has or. So we think of that as being spelled like this. So they're kind of flip-flopped, right? Work and world have an OR spelling, but an sound. Ward has an OR sound, represented in IPA like this, with an O and an Ward. And then again, the voiced D sound, ward. That's a good question and a challenging combination of words and sounds. I hope this helps you work through that. I will have this video on my live streams playlist after the fact. So if that was for the person whose question that was, I'm losing you now, but I would suggest going back to this point in the video and reviewing that and taking notes and practicing those words by themselves and then in contrast with one another. Okay, good. And those were some of the common words that we say a lot, right? We say work and world. Ward is slightly less common unless you have some reason to be talking about a ward. Julian liked that. Oh, that was you, Julian, with the question. Okay, so thank you for bringing that up, and I hope that helped you clarify those differences. Okay, so more questions as you have them, I'll take them. Let's talk just a little bit longer about some common words. So we talked about the word says, and I'd also like to point out another word we use very frequently, which is the word to. To like to. Now, when I just tell you that word to, I use vowel oo. It sounds like this, to. It's the same as the number two and as the word to, which means also. So if you're saying the word to, I like to go, I need to talk to you, you're pronouncing to correctly. That's not exactly an error, but what's happening there is that Americans don't use the vowel oo when they're using that word to in connected speech. That's because that word is never really stressed when it's this one, to. So if I'm saying I need to talk to you, well, I'll keep showing you. It actually changes from oo to So it sounds like this. Oops, it sounds like ta. And that's how I spell it so people can see. This is the IPA, or the International Phonetic Alphabet symbols. So we say ta. I need to talk to you, to go, to eat. We don't say to. And so this is something that if you say, I need to talk to you, you can hear how when I say that, it's a little bit choppy. It doesn't flow very smoothly. So if I can switch to using more of the vowel schwa, saying ta, it's going to sound more fluent. It's going to help my speech become more natural sounding, more American, and more fluent. A way to practice this is to just practice saying verbs at first. So you can think of what you might do in the morning. To get up, to brush my teeth, to get dressed, to go to work, to talk, to walk, to play, to eat, etc. Once you get used to and comfortable putting that to in, you can begin to build longer sentences and try to make that change in your speech. Now that might be a little bit challenging because, as we said, the word to tends not to be stressed in running speech, so we don't pay a lot of attention to it. That time I used the to. We don't pay a lot of attention to it. I guess in some cases, when the next word is a vowel, I'm going to stay with to. Maybe more detail than you need to know. But this is one of the elements of more advanced American accent that I recommend trying to implement, just because it really will help you with your fluency. All right, another question. Have a problem in producing unvoiced sound. How can I improve it? What I would suggest is practicing and attempting to say the sounds by themselves. So for example, the T sound, t is voiceless, a voiceless sound, and you might be making more of a D sound, d, when it's voiced. And what I'm guessing is that actually you probably are making what's called an unaspirated T, which is a little bit different than a D sound. And so for a lot of languages, when the T is at the beginning of the word, it's hard for you, in your language, you don't have an aspirated T. What that means is there's a little puff of air that comes out. So how I recommend trying to get this sound is to practice just making the sound by itself. So put your hand in front of your mouth, because you want to be able to feel the air as it comes out, and try t, t, t. Make sure your voice is off, and you really need a little puff of air. If it's difficult with T, you can start by trying with P. P, p, p. That might be a little easier because you close your lips and then you pop them back open and the air comes out. And then another voiceless sound that you might have difficulty with at the start of words is the K sound. K, k, k. If you can make those sounds by themselves, then to begin to put them on words, just try first without a word. So if I think of the word put, I'm going to say it with my habit. I might say more like but, where that puff of air doesn't come out. I'm guessing this is the problem that you have. If I think of that word, my habitual pattern will come out. If I just say a syllable though, the P sound and a vowel, like pa, 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 it might be a little easier for me to do the aspirated P, or ta, ta, t, t, tu, tu. So build your voiceless sound at the beginning from the sound through the syllable, and then begin to try it on words like talk, take, tell. I do have several videos for this, and I'll direct you to those afterwards. But if you go and you look for initial P or T in my search box on the channel page, Speech Modification Seattle, you'll find those videos to help you walk you through that. So I hope that gave you the answer that you were looking for, and that those are the sounds that you're having difficulty with. That's very typical for certain language backgrounds to have the unaspirated initial voiceless consonants. So great questions today. Thank you so much for being here and being involved in the class. I really like to hear what questions you have, both during class and on my videos in the comments, because it helps me know what additional videos to make for the channel to help you improve your American accent. So that's great. And again, if you're watching this after the live broadcast and you have a question that I haven't covered today, feel free to put it in the comments. I will be returning, and I always see and respond to those comments. Direct you to the videos where you can find the answers, or create a new video if I don't already have an answer for you for that. All right, so we've been going about 25 minutes. Let's do our quick tip. We'll talk more about this topic with common words again, possibly next week. It's really a useful topic, and I want to make sure that we cover lots of different words that you're commonly using. You can find many of these words and samples on my Say This, Not That playlist, including says and to and many other common words that you use. Those are great quick help videos where I tell you what's going wrong, what to do differently, and how to change it. And it's usually in under a minute. I suggest taking a look at those and maybe picking one per week, or every few days go and read it, try a new one, try to implement those changes in your speech. Taking very small steps to improve your American accent is more effective than trying to take it all on at once. It can be very overwhelming, I know. So using those small steps and implementing them is more useful. I also want to remind you that I am taking registrations for my local classes, so I hope you can join those. I have a new element to my local classes where I'm going to be doing some drop-in sessions in Bellevue on Wednesday afternoons. Again, if you're not local, I also do that over Skype. So go to my store page on speechmodification.com and you can look under individual accent training. And you can get just a one session trial. And the great reason to do that is that you'll have half an hour with me, getting some direct feedback on your speech, answering your questions. And what I'll do for you is give you some steps to continue on your own. And to help you do that, I'm going to give you a month of access to my online practice materials that you can use on your own. And it also gives you a good idea of what one-to-one training would be like and if it's something that you would like to do. So if you prefer in person, schedule that with me and we can do it on Wednesday afternoons in Bellevue. And if you are not here or near Bellevue, but you still want to try it out, you can do that by purchasing that on speechmodification.com in my store. And I'll schedule according to what's convenient for you. So I work with people all over the world over Skype, and I would like to work with you too. Okay, Catherine has a question. Can you please pronounce the word enough and usually? Okay, so enough. I tend to use a vowel schwa at the beginning of that, enough. I think it's also in the dictionary with enough. What we typically don't do is enough. We don't say the letter that is in the beginning of that word. The stress is on the second syllable. So the most important thing about enough is that you're stretching the enough and that first syllable is reduced and short. So you might use vowel you might use vowel I, but you want to really stress the enough. I'll say it with vowel schwa, enough, and with vowel I, enough. Then the next word was usually. This is one, I believe I have a say this, not that on the word usually because we have words that end with A-L-L-Y. When we see that written out, usually, we want to make a syllable for that A-L-L-Y, or two syllables, ali. In this case, we tend to say usually. So again, even though I have usual, three syllables, usually. Americans tend to reduce. That's what's happening there. So I don't say usually. I reduce it to usually. And the stress is on the first syllable, usually. The other thing I'll hear with usually is people will sometimes use an oo and they'll miss this glide at the beginning, the y part, usually. And then this symbol, the zh sound, can be challenging as well. So usually. So I hope that helped you with enough and usually. You can check out, if I do have a video on usually, you can put it in the search box on speech modification, my channel page, and that video will come up for you. And if I don't, perhaps that'll be a video I make for you because people usually have difficulty with that word, just like you. Thanks for bringing it up. Okay, so my quick tip for today is check out the Say This, Not That playlist. Pick a common word or two and check and see, do you have that error pattern on it? And begin to practice for that word and see if you can begin to make a change in your speech, implementing that common word. A great one to start with is the word the. I did put the link for my ebook for our participant who had the question about the TH sound. You can go through the process of learning how to change your speech by looking at that word the and looking at the sounds and error patterns in that word. And again, Say This, That, Not That is really based on the words we use the most. All of my smart accent training is designed to have a real effect on your speech by working with the words that make up the bulk of what you say. So I hope to see some of you next week in class here in Bellevue. And for those of you who are not local, I hope to see you on our YouTube class. We'll be meeting again next Friday at noon for a live question and answer class. If you have questions that I didn't get to today, come back and ask me next week, or as I said, put them in the comments and I'll get back to you with an answer. Great class today, guys. Thanks so much for being here and being a part of it. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound American, you can do it. speechmodification.com.